everyone. My name is Paul, and I am a nerd. Apparently not enough of a nerd to get the recording started and to start the broadcast at the right time with the technical difficulties we're having, but I am a nerd nonetheless, and you are lucky enough to be here for the June 2015 TABS 3 virtual user group meeting, where today we are talking about rate reports. Mary Jo is going to cover that topic, and check registers. I'm going to talk about them. But before we do that, a little bit of housekeeping. This is your GoToMeeting control panel right here, and it controls your meeting experience. If you are still seeing this on your screen, it's because you haven't pressed this button that looks like an arrow pointing to the right, because pressing that button will cause this to go right off the right-hand side of your screen and disappear. When it does that, this is the only thing you can still see, and this button will turn into one that points to the left, because clicking it again when it's pointing to the left will cause this to slide back onto your screen so that you may type your question right here and remember to hit send. And Leanne, our humble moderator, will recognize that you have a question, will interrupt Mary Jo and myself at just the right time, and she will ask your question for you. Now, if you have follow-up questions, if we get off track, if we're not answering the question that you intended to ask, just keep typing those follow-up questions here, keep remembering to hit send, and Leanne will keep conveying your information. If you find that you'd rather talk to us, hit this button here that looks like a hand with an arrow pointing upward in front of it. That means raise your hand, and Leanne will do the same thing. She'll recognize you have a question. She will interrupt us, and she won't read your question because you won't have typed it. She will instead unmute your microphone. Again, if you have follow-up questions, if you need to keep us on track, if you need to clarify the question you originally asked, just keep talking to us, because at that point the microphone that you are talking into will remain live until we're done answering your question. And so, without further ado, I'm going to press just the right buttons, no more, no less, and I'm going to go into tabs where Mary Jo is going to talk about the rate reports. Mary Jo?
So a few months ago, we went through all of the different ways that we can add rates and talked extensively about that. But we needed to show you then how to actually see what rates you've applied to clients. So we decided to do this webinar to show you that. So under our reports, we have some client setup reports. So in here is where we can see a client rate report. Now, we talked before about just changing rates, assigning them by timekeeper level. We talked about assigning rate tables and then sharing those out. So let's say you need to see what rate is for what client. This is where we're going to go. So client setup reports, client rate report. When we come in here, we have all the same parameters we have for all of our TABS 3 reports. And then for the first screen, so you can narrow that down by one client, an attorney, whatever you want to do. And then you can show what you want to have appear on the report. You can do this by level. If you're doing rates by timekeeper level, you can show the billing rate code. You can show cost tables or fee rate tables. So any of these things that are defined for a client will show up and can be included.
And like she said, we talked about how to set those up 2 months ago. So if you're looking for information on how to set them up, just go back to the archives and look for that virtual user group meeting.
On the sort tab, again, our standard sorts, you can do it by primary timekeeper, secondary originating category. I'm going to just do it by none just to get a straight report here of all the clients in client ID order. And we're going to say OK and preview this. And this will show me, first off, you can see these first few clients. It will tell me that they have, I'm going to scroll over just a little bit here so you can see this. So these first few clients are using timekeeper rate number 1. We've got 2 clients that are set up as flat fee clients. Then we've got another one for 1, another one here for timekeeper rate number 2, another one. But then down here, we've got a rate table customized for this particular matter. So what we see is that they are using a custom fee rate table, and it's showing what the rate is for each timekeeper that is set up in that custom fee rate table. And then also they have a cost table in here set up. So this particular matter has all of those things. If we go down to the next one, we can see that this one is using a shared fee rate table, and it's sharing with that one that we see up above. Let me click over just one thing here. So client 200.01 has the custom table that we set up, but then client number 200.02 is just going to share that same rate table. So we don't have to recreate the wheel every time. This one has already been assigned to this one. 415 has its own custom rate table. and then 850 has their own custom rate table, and so on. So all of the clients can show up here on this report, and it will tell exactly, do they have a rate table or not? Is it defined, and what is it? Are they using timekeeper rate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6? Are they flat fee? Are they using an hourly rate? What are they set up for based on, and I'm just going to do just a fast recap to tell you where I'm getting this information from. So if I go back into the client screen and we go to the rate tab, if you've defined anything on this screen, that's what's showing up there. Here's the rate tables, here's the level, and here's our timekeeper billing code rate. So all of those things are set up here on the rate screen, and to see what we've assigned, we're just going into that report and we're bringing that up so we can see it. Now, this is the orders and the parameters that we have to show this, and you'll notice that I've just got it in client ID order, and it's I really don't have a big option to change that. It's what it is. But we have an option at Attorney Computer Systems that we can build custom reports to show this differently. And I'm going to let Paul just talk real quick about custom reports and some of the things that we can do with that.
Well, I'm just going to say that we have a way to do that. We have a team of developers that can do that. And one of the most frequently asked for reports is the ability to see these sorted by rate table. Because a lot of firms, especially our insurance defense firms, they'll have one rate table that they share among literally hundreds, if not thousands, of matters. And they want to be able to very quickly tell all the matters that rate table is assigned to. So instead of printing out the whole list and then going through it by hand, if we could just sort it by that rate table, then we would be able to see exactly how a rate table that's kind of been built to be shared has been shared. So that's one of the things that you're not able to do through the software that our custom developers can help you to achieve. And it's something that we can do with something called our ACS Data Viewer, which translates to it costs less because we're reusing some technology. And since it's such a common report, and we've done it many times before, and it's very easy and inexpensive for us to do.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So this report is going to show you, like I said, all of those different things. It's a good one, but it does not sort it. Some firms, as Paul said, they will have a rate table that they share among clients, but then some firms also set up rate tables for each timekeeper. And sometimes the timekeeper might have multiple rate tables that they use and they push out. So there's all kinds of different ways that this could be tracked. But this report will show you that just out of the box. Another way to see some rates is the transaction file list. And again, under our reports, the transaction report, over on our transaction file list. If we go to our transactions and are looking at fees, we can say whether or not we want to include the rate on that report. So this is a good place if you're looking at all of the time for a certain timekeeper and you want to make sure that they have the right rate for that particular client. You can come in and do a transaction file list for that client, see all of the fees, see all of the rates that have been applied, and make sure that they are the same hourly rate. Because we know, the defaults that we set on the client are just that. They're the defaults. They can be changed. A timekeeper can change that as they're entering it, and sometimes that doesn't need to happen. So we want to have a way to be able to check that. So here's one way in the transaction file is to show the rate on the report to see if all of the fee entries for that particular attorney are, let's say, $250 across the board. So that's just another report that you can use for that. And lastly, everybody that has tabs has a free version of Practice Master. And if we want to track history, we can do that in Practice Master. So let's say we wanted to see if we come across a rate that has been changed on the transaction file list, and we want to see who changed it and when, we actually could go into Practice Master because all fee entries are synced automatically over to Practice Master for WIP.
Because keep in mind that although what Mary Jo is showing you is how the rates are defined to default, that doesn't mean that somebody can't go in and change that rate when they make the time entry, or go in after the fact and pull up a transaction and change the rate. That's what we're looking at here.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So in Practice Master, I'm just going to go into a particular client. Let me get out of that. We're in test data here, so I'm just going to go into just a client in here. We'll just pick somebody and go over to the fee screen. Oh, actually, we did one, didn't we, Paul? Did we change one on Williams, I believe? John Williams. Well, let me get out of these alarms here. So John Williams, and I'm going to go over to the fee. So I'm just sorting, finding the client I want to look at. And then here's one that has been changed. I can see the base rate here should be, you know, 250 or 225 or something. Something has been, you know, it's different. If I want to see, I know for a fact we changed this one because we were doing it as a test. This should be something else. And I want to see who changed it and why is it 220 instead of 250 or 225. And over here on the side on Quick Clicks, I have a display history. And as long as I'm highlighted on that particular entry, I'm going to just display the history, and it's going to tell me that, oh, on 11/17 at 8:02 a.m., Ron changed the rate from 225 to 220. And I can see exactly who changed the rate and when they did it. So this is a good tool to use as well if you're trying to track down who's changing time so that you can get your policies in place and make sure everybody's on the same page. So that is just another way that you can do that. So just in PracticeMaster, you don't have to use PracticeMaster for anything else. We're really dealing with WIP time here because most of the time we don't show the accounts receivable or, you know, the archive time that's been billed in here. It can be done, but we usually don't. So we're looking at WIP time and just making sure that before we do the billing, what happened here so that we can get those corrections in place. So display history in PracticeMaster on the fee tab of any client, and you can see what happened. That's all I have for the rates. Paul?
Okay. Well, I'm going to switch gears entirely, and I am going to talk about check registers. And so to do that, I'm going to go over here to accounts payable. And I'll be perfectly frank, this is something that people sometimes have a little bit of misunderstanding about. I had to get clarification this morning from Mary Jo about exactly what these two reports mean, because we have something called a pre-check register, and we have something called a check register. Now I'm going to go ahead and print the check register, and real quickly I'm going to explain that you can look at posted or unposted or both. Most often when you're doing a check register, it defaults to posted and defaults to both for manual or printed. Manual checks are things that you've entered. Maybe the attorney took a check with him and then filled it out at court for the filing fee. Or more commonly, a manual check is something like an electronic transaction, a debit to a debit card, or something that's being paid electronically as opposed to being paid with a written check. And then very handy is the ability to print all the GL information. So you see not only the check, but how did it post over to GL, what was debited and what was credited. The tabs information, so you can see if there was a corresponding cost entry to take that check that was written in accounts payable and divvied up among a certain group of clients for as client recoverable costs. And of course, we always are pretty much printing the description. So I'm going to go ahead and print this and view it. And what you're going to see then is posted checks that have been printed in that time period. Now, I say time period. I forgot to go over here and show you that we can select which bank account, which invoice date. That's commonly what people are selecting on. We want to see the invoices from a certain week. You can select which vendors. Maybe you only want to look at a specific vendor, so you put them in under beginning and ending. And so then when we go over and print this, we're looking at the checks that were posted, because I did say posted, for that particular vendor or that particular date range, and we see them here.
And a lot of times, Paul, you probably would use the check date because you may be putting your invoices in beforehand. Some firms, as soon as they get the invoices, they're just putting it in, they're using all the same date. But sometimes you're using a different date for that invoice date, a different date for the due date, and then the actual check date.
Exactly.
So depending on what you want to see, you may choose different
Yeah,
things
you're
there.
right, Mary Jo. I said the invoice date is most commonly what's being, it's probably the check date. Now, so then what is the pre-check register? And so if we go here, this is only going to show the things that have not been posted yet. So if we were to go into the invoices that have not been printed yet. Thank you, Mary Jo's correcting me here. So if we have entered some transactions, we have not printed the checks yet, this is what's waiting to be printed as a check. Whereas this other check register, that's going to show me the things that have already been printed. We may not have posted them to GL yet, but we have printed the checks. We've probably sent them out, or they're sitting on somebody's desk. So the main difference between the pre and the post check register, or the pre-check register and the the regular check register, is whether or not the check has been printed. Now, if we go into invoice manual checks and we pull up, let's actually get this vendor out of here. Do you remember who had those unprinted checks, Mary Jo? Mary Jo's going to save me yet again. Oh, I remember. We went in straight through the report, Mary Jo. Good point. And you can just click on that. So let's do that. Let's click on one of those. And any check that has to be printed in the check number or in the list under check number has the word invoice, that is a check that has not been printed. Okay? And so that's how we can tell which ones are the ones that need to be printed versus the ones that have been printed and probably put in the mail. Now, one thing that people want to see here is that they're not going to see in this particular report is a running balance. And the reason is that this is an accounts payable system, and it really doesn't know all the other stuff that has to do with this bank account. The bank account itself lives in general ledger. And so the payments that are coming in from tabs and the checks that are coming in from accounts payable all land in this general ledger account called whatever the bank account's called. And so if we go over to the general ledger system, which is right here on my system, and we print a general ledger just for the bank account, and that's the one that I want to print, and perhaps for some sort of a date range, I'm going to let it go with the default of November of 2014 because that's where our sample data lives. Let's take a look at what this looks like. And so here what we have is a list of every particular transaction, and it's printed, and I'm going to zoom out just a little so you can see that full screen. It's oriented like a general ledger report. It doesn't look quite like a check register, but that's what it is. It shows checks being written, and it shows deposits coming in, and usually payments, and it shows the corresponding balance as these checks and deposits are affecting it. So if you're looking for something that looks really like a standard check register that in your mind you might think of being what a check register should look like, something with a running balance, your best bet to get that report is actually to go into the general ledger and print the general ledger report for that account. You need to specify that particular account, that particular bank account. Of course, you want to specify the bank account, not something different. And it'll show you everything that's hit that bank account with the running balance. And that's about all I have to talk about.
I'm just going to add just to your accounts payable, Paul. Can we go back into
Sure, we can.
That pre-check register is very good, especially if you go to print checks. If you ever went in and you've hit this print check window, and we want to select the checks or invoices to print, and I'm just going to throw it in here so we can see it. Sometimes firms will have things in here that are dated way back or it's old, and they'll look at this and think, what in the world is that and why is it on here? These same things, these are all invoices waiting to be printed, is what happens on the pre-check register. So when we come in here and we look at this pre-check register and we see all these invoices and we think, well, that's old, that's already been paid, that shouldn't even be there. This is something to go in and look, it's probably a duplicate invoice. Or there was something that was voided and the invoices needed to be voided as well, but that box didn't get checked or something. So this is a good checklist if you're seeing old stuff on here that you're never going to print, to go in here and either delete that and clear it or actually print the check and figure out what happened. So this is another tool, another way to monitor that and clean it up.
You can actually use the report as a tool to do that. You can get the report up on the screen, go in here, hit the delete button on that invoice, go back to the report. Well, it's not going to let us do that one because it's tied to something. And when you get back to the report, if you hit refresh, it'll rebuild the report without that check. So you can kind of just go down here and say, I'm going to delete all these, and you can just go down one after another and then refresh and make sure you caught them all.
Yep.
You don't need to print this and then go in and kind of jump back and forth. You can do it this way.
Yep.
So that's all we have for today. Next month, we're going to talk about print settings. Mary Jo is going to talk about that. how to control the printer and make sure that you have the right one selected, and how to control the margins and fonts and things like that. And I'm going to talk about something called the Client Manager. If you know what the Client Manager is, well, come anyways. You may pick up a few things you didn't know. If you don't know what it is, then by all means, definitely come, because it is probably the best place to work when you're doing bill prep. Once you've got the draft bills out and it's time to work with them and get them cleaned up and ready to go out the door, Client Manager is the place to go to do everything. And you may have noticed I didn't remind you about sunsetting of version 15.1 and 15.2 at the beginning of the virtual user group meeting. We've been doing that at the beginning and the end of every meeting for what seems like forever. Well, that's because it's sunsetted tomorrow. And so if you haven't been paying attention to our 2 notices, we're only going to tell you once, and this is the last time you're going to hear about this, unless, of course, you attend the Practice Master Virtual User Group meeting in about half an hour. But it's done. If you have version 15.1 or 15.2 and you are currently getting support and you're currently able to call STI and get help, or maybe you have a question that we need to ask them on your behalf, that ability is going to go away in 2 days. Tomorrow is the last day you'll be able to get support on version 15.1 or 15.2. So if you have 15.1 or 15.2, think about getting the latest update installed. It's probably well worth considering for a variety of reasons, but the one I'm talking about right now is the fact that support is going away. And last but not least, if you go to our website, which is attorneycomputersystems.com, and notice how I emphasize that S on the end of the word systems, and click on videos, you will be able to see all the different video groups that we have. For instance, you're currently attending a TABS 3 virtual user group meeting. And if you click on that, you will find information on how to sign up. You will find the link to sign up for the next one, which is the one that's coming up in July that we just told you the topics for. You will find recorded versions of the past ones. Here's the one that we're attending right now, so it's currently in post-production. Should be up in about a week, but then as you scroll down further, you will find a video recording of every virtual user group meeting that we've done for the last years and years. We've been doing these for many years, and we've been recording them, gosh, what, Mary Jo, 4 or 5 years? A long time. So we have a lot of content out there. You can search using the search box. You can just scroll through them. A lot of people come here and they just kind of browse through and find a topic they're interested in and watch the video. Don't stay up too late. 2 o'clock in the morning is your curfew. If you're still watching these videos at 2 o'clock in the morning, you need help. So that's it for today. Everybody have a good rest of the day, a good rest of the month, and we will see you in July. Thanks much. Bye-bye.